This was the game that made me buy a GameCube. I still remember when it was announced. It didn't seem real. Everything looked perfect. The graphics, the atmosphere, everything. It was just like when they announce your ideal game and then you get it and you get to see it. You feel like you're in a dream. Like the graphics were so good that even nowadays they don't look out of place, especially if upscaled. The way the game came to be is also peculiar because it was from what I understand, it was the development team that decided to make this remake like as a passion project, let's say, just to get accustomed to the GameCube's hardware. And the game itself is pretty faithful. It builds on what the original did for the most part. It expands on environments and changes some puzzles, trying to make it feel fresh even for those people who played the original already. It plays on their expectations as well by switching up some things, some events, like for example the dogs that jump through the window, or the tiger's eyes puzzle. So even the things that remain similar, there's still something different to them to spice things up for the people who already know how the original game plays out. It also rebalances the two characters, putting them on more equal footing. Chris is still a bit harder, but at least now he has more strengths than just more health and faster aiming speed. His two new strengths come from the two new mechanics that the game introduces. One, defensive item. These are weapons that don't use inventory space and are one use only. Jill has a dagger and a taser. Chris has the dagger as well and a grenade, which causes an insta death to any enemy it's used against. And if it's used against a zombie, it decapitates the zombie. Which it also ties into the second mechanic, which involves burning zombies or destroying their head to prevent them from turning into faster monsters. So the famous Crimson Heads, which is, from what I understand, is the state before the leakers. So a zombie turns into a Crimson Head, and then after becoming a Crimson Head, he turns into a leaker. I mean, depending on whether they get another T virus dose or not. That's, I think, what determines the whole thing. But yeah, the game introduces kerosene tanks scattered throughout the mansion that you can use to burn zombies. The zombies that you don't headshot. You don't critical headshot them. Because as we know, critical headshots are random. Mostly random, I think, in this game. So the ones that don't get their head exploded, you'll have to burn them. You can refill your canister and light it up with the lighter. Chris has this from the very beginning. The lighter, I mean. He has him He has it as its special item. Jill instead will have to pick it up and carry it in her inventory. Which is something that was not in the original game. Which is, like I've said before, it was very baffling, honestly, that Chris didn't have the glider, at least in the original game, even though it didn't really was super useful. But you still will use it a couple of times, so might as well have given it to him just to make up for not having anything. Especially because Chris has the glider in the original uncensored intro as well. So, as for the rest, the two characters are the same as they were in the original. So Chris has these two characteristics that make him more balanced. He is still like slightly harder to play, I think, but he is less feels less tedious because he at least now has the glider, which you can burn zombies with, and he also has that secondary defensive item which allows you to pretty much remove a zombie if you, like, because you can use the defensive items very easily. As soon as you get grabbed, you press LB and you can use a defensive item on a zombie or any other enemy, as long as they perform an attack that in which they actually grab you. There's an animation in which you are grabbed, and then you can use the defensive item. So you can use it on hunters as well, on dogs as well, and so on. And the grenade is very good because it pretty much deletes any enemy when it explodes. While the taser instead is not as good, it just damages the enemy. So Chris in this sense has it better at least. So to recap, Chris has more health, faster aiming speed, he has fewer inventory slots, but in the remake he also gets the glider, which helps with the world burning zombies thing, and he also has the strongest defensive item. Meanwhile, Jill, she gets more weapons. She pretty much gets the shotgun and the grenade launcher almost immediately. She has the lockpick. She has fewer health and has lower aiming speed. So things balance out better in this one. Another gameplay mechanic that gets introduced in this one and is barely even talked about is the perfect shots. If you time your shots right, you'll be able to shoot faster, at a faster pace. And it can be very useful because, especially when zombies get close and you have the handgun, that can really mow them down very fast. The only problem is that the timing, I never got the timing very well, so sometimes I'm able to perform this perfect shot. Sometimes I can't. The timing is quite strict, I would say. Or maybe I'm just not good at it. I don't know. But yeah, it can be useful. It's just not super user-friendly, let's say that. But it's a nice addition because it allows you to beast at least some enemies with a faster firing rate. When it comes to the world's burning zombies matter, though, I have to say that it only comes into play in the first part of the game, like up until you leave for the guardhouse. assuming you know where to go and what to do, because since it's a mechanic that you only will experience in areas where you spend a lot of time in, so namely the mansion 1, because the house is full of zombies at the beginning of the game. And the zombies will turn depending on the timer. There's a timer. Some zombies will turn after a certain amount of time, or after you pick up specific items that are needed for story progression. So, depending on these two factors, zombies that are left still on the ground, so not decapitated, will turn. And this definitely comes into play more if you spend time exploring, or if you're not familiar with what to do, where you have to go, because it exposes you to more crimson heads, to the possibility of incurring into more crimson heads, as opposed to if you breeze through the game or know the best optimal routes to maybe avoid them or limit them. And when you come back to the house after the guardhouse, in the guardhouse you can also like experience some crimson heads, but it's very rare. If you know what to do, the guardhouse is very, very short as a section. In the second part of the game, when you come back to the house, there's hunters, so it is possible to meet a few crimson heads, but it's mostly hunters. And then in the caves, there's no zombies. In the lab, and then in the lab comes into play a little bit more, but still not enough. Not enough that is really very prevalent anymore after the beginning of the game. Unless, like I've said, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what to do and where to go. The layout of the house also got slightly changed, or expanded as well in some cases, with some completely new areas. The place that got the biggest overall is probably the guardhouse, especially the aqua ring, because now there's even a shark puzzle, which makes the sharks a bit more memorable rather than just a nuisance like they were in the original game. Also, the fact that the big shark can insta-kill you if you wait too long, as soon as you enter the aqua ring. The music will get louder the closer you are to being eaten. I mean, this is definitely something that's not new player friendly, because you don't really know what's gonna happen. So yeah, maybe new players won't like this. This is also why I say that it's better to play the original first, because the remake was done with the original in mind. So I think it's better if you experience the original first and then you play the remake. I mean, the insta-kill thing was not in the original, but at least if you have played the original, you know you will need a control room key before you go to the basement in the guardhouse where the sharks are, because you can go there without the key, and you'll probably maybe spend time running around the aqua ring and you'll get yourself killed by the sharks. So it's best to know what's coming first. The shark puzzle as well plays a lot on the fact that the player will panic, because it's actually quite straightforward to solve. But the thing is that if it's your first time playing and you see there's a timer and you're not sure what you have to do, so you'll panic a little bit. I think the game hopes on that for you to choke on that puzzle and die. Because it's an insta-kill puzzle. If you fail the puzzle, if you don't solve the puzzle before the timer runs out, you die immediately. And that definitely adds to the tension. Because you can, I mean, even if you're a new player, you can easily imagine that if the window breaks, you're gonna die. So it definitely makes you feel tense. Like I've said already, the game loves to play with your expectations as a fan of the original. It also adds some little things here and there that are apparently inconsequential but can help you through your adventure or offer more context to the story or simply more in the vein of environmental storytelling. For example, something you might not expect is Richard staying alive for longer in the remake. And he dies differently depending on who you play as. To be honest, in the original, he dies immediately, even if you bring him the serum in time, which I always thought it was bullshit. Because the only thing you get from him in the original is the radio, which is fucking useless. Now he will live more, assuming you bring the serum in time to him. And at least if you do save him, you'll get his combat shotgun when he dies, which is a remake exclusive. It's pretty much a better version of the standard shotgun. Jill gets the combat shotgun when you fight the snake, because Richard will come and help you, and he dies there with Jill. While with Chris, you'll have to wait until the guardhouse, because he'll die. Richard will die to the sharks in Chris' playthrough, so you'll have to wait there to get the combat shotgun with Chris. And only other new non-unlockable addition in terms of weapons, I mean. Because there are unlockable weapons if you beat the game under a certain amount of time, but I'm talking about standard weapons that are in the game. The other only new addition is the self-defense gun, which is a one-hit kill, I think, on all normal enemies, but it only has one bullet, so once you use the bullet, you might as well throw it away. The remake also expands on some of the mansion lore through something that was already present in the pre-release version of the original, but was scrapped. The story of Trevor and also his family. George Trevor was the architect of the mansion. And in the game, there are files written by him that narrate his demise by Umbrella. You also get to learn what happened to his wife and daughter, and the latter is another notable addition to the game. Sadly for her, she got experimented on by Umbrella for years, and has turned into an immortal monster that will stalk you at specific points in the game. It's more of a set piece than a real enemy due to her being immune to damage. So it feels like a bit... as an addition, it's a cool addition, but it doesn't feel very substantial because it's more valuable as a lore addition, but in terms of gameplay, it's kind of lame actually, because even in her boss fight, which is not really a boss fight because you just have to push those blocks, she feels very inconsequential. She's the type of monster that builds atmosphere because she's creepy to look at and all, and her lore is disturbing. But as an actual enemy, it really doesn't add much. It really doesn't adds much of anything to the game, in my opinion. And I imagine that if they ever remake this game again, I can assure you they'll make her a stalker type enemy, just like they did with Mr. X. I have this feeling, but yeah. In a way, you can argue that a lot of the additions are really inconsequential, um, and add nothing of substance to the remake. I mean, in a way, it is kind of true, but they build up atmosphere for sure. Although, as much as I like the their design setting and the atmosphere in the remake, everything kind of falls apart for me if I start questioning things. There are too many things that don't make sense. Like, why is the mansion full of candles, full of lit candles? Who? How is it possible that the candles have remained lit for months? Why is there a cemetery outside the house? Because Umbrella wanted to keep the whole thing secret, so they wouldn't build a fucking cemetery outside of our research facility that it's supposed to remain secret. If they need to bury someone, they'll just bury him into the ground without any marks. And also, why did Umbrella put Lisa's mother in that stone coffin? So, it doesn't make much sense. This is the kind of game that you have to turn your brain off. Otherwise, if you start questioning things, everything falls apart, like I've said. And also the whole redesign, it's all very cool and everything, but it feels a little bit too spooky, haunted house, and in contrast with the sobriety of the original game's aesthetics. Because the original game was very simple in this sense. The interiors were pretty simple, nothing too elaborate. While in the remake, they went with the opposite direction in a lot of cases. Like I've said, the cemetery, doesn't make much sense. But it's cool to look at for sure. Also, the remake does a thing I really like when it comes to Resident Evil. It's that it bridges the narrative between the first game and the second game in a way. Like when you recover from Wesker's body the file about William Birkin, where he says that he has discovered the G virus thanks to his experiments on Lisa, Trevor. That's a really important addition to the series, because you get to see that the G virus creation is mostly Lisa's doing, in the sense that it was her presence as a specimen to test on that really enabled William to discover and come up with the G virus. So it's a cool lore addition, in my opinion. Even though Lisa is kind of forgotten after actually it is forgotten because she dies in the mansion's explosion, she still left her mark as a pretty iconic character in the series. And in terms of gameplay, the additions are okay. I like them overall. They complete the game pretty well. I mean, more than complete, complement the game pretty well. They make it different enough compared to the original so that it's worth replaying even if you have already played the original. The whole burning bodies, crimson heads, defensive items I personally think are all good additions, even though the defensive items make the game a bit too easy in some cases because they are pretty much free out of jail card in a lot of situations, because you, even if you get grabbed, you pretty much can avoid damage completely. But I mean, they're fun to use. I don't mind them. Quite a bit balance change they did on the remake is that the headshots with the shotgun are random as well now. So if you point your shotgun up in the air, in the original, you can headshot zombies 100% of the time. And in the remake instead, they made that thing random. So it's, I think it's 50-50. You have a 50-50 chance to explode a zombie head if you aim upwards with the shotgun in the remake. Which, I mean, I understand why they did it, because honestly, as soon as you get the shotgun, zombies get realized, but I guess it was a necessary balance change, because if you put together the defensive items plus the free shotgun headshots, yeah, the game would have been even easier, because the remake is indeed easier. If you look also at enemies like the hunters in the remake, they're way easier to deal with compared to the original game. In the original game, they're probably among the hardest enemies in the whole series, while in the remake they are very, I mean, I'm not gonna say non-threatening, because they can still kill you very easily, especially if there's two of them. But they are not as agile. You can just shoot them until they die. No, I mean, they have few, I think in the remake they have fewer invincibility frames compared to the original, because what makes them hard in the original is the number of invincibility frames they have and the way they jump. Because I think they read your inputs in the original. So sometimes they'll jump at you, sometimes they won't, depending on the amount of health they have. So they are more complex in the original game, and they are, as a consequence, way harder to deal with. So the original is just harder as a whole compared to the remake, in my opinion. Another big thing that got changed for the worst, in my opinion, is the fact that, I mean, in the original you had a few choices you had to perform. You had to make in both playthroughs with both Chris and Jill regarding their partner characters, so Rebecca and Barry. But it was more prevalent with Jill. When in her playthrough, this whole mechanic, I think it's like a trust mechanic between Barry and Jill. Rebecca and Chris have it too, but it's less prevalent. But yeah, in the original game there were quite a few events that contributed to this building trust between Jill and Barry. And in the remake, they actually removed quite a few of these events. They actually made the whole thing pretty straightforward. Because in the original game, it was a constant re-evaluating of the trust between Jill and Barry. depending on what choices you made regarding to him. While in the remake, it all boils down to whether you give him back his gun during the Lisa Trevor boss fight, which is very, very reductive. Like, it's a worst decision, because it pretty much removes all the uniqueness in that aspect that the original had, and it dumps it down, because it just like devolves it into a binary choice. The same thing that Resident Evil 7 does with the way it decides its ending. It it like reduces it to a binary choice, and that's also why I think Resident Evil 7. One of the reasons Resident Evil 7 is not that good of game, but yeah, they did it here too. They downgraded the whole thing. It was pretty complex in the original game, the way you could build trust with Barry and the way your decisions affected his relationship with you. While in the remake, it's all gone. It's a like A and B choice. I don't like it. This was a pretty big thing in the original game. That also made you replay the game numerous times to see all the possible options and outcomes. But no, here it's just everything is predetermined in this sense. So this is I think it's a pretty big downgrade in the remake in this sense. The soundtrack as well. It's still, I mean, the soundtrack is pretty faithful in the remake, but a few tracks are missing. But I think it's good enough. Way, way better than what they did in Resident Evil 2 remake. Let me tell you that. So as a whole, I think the game is pretty good. Although it's a bit overrated in my opinion. I was one of the people that would have told you, yeah, you don't need to play the original, just play the remake a few years ago, before last year and this year where I replayed it once again. I would have told you, yeah, just play the remake. But after replaying the original and then the remake, yeah, the original does quite a few things better than the remake. Namely, like I said, the whole trust mechanic that decides which ending you get is done better in the original. Also, in terms of gameplay and controls, the original is snappier compared to the remake, because the remake is over animated in some cases. So, like for example, when you move the character, there's gonna be a little bit of delay in its actions and animations. I mean, it's not as bad as the modern remakes for sure, so it's still pretty snappy, but the remake indeed does have this issue compared to the original, which is just snappier. And you like, coupled with all the other things I've said about the atmosphere be a bit too over the top and so on, I think the original is still worth playing. Possibly before the remake. So if you want to get into the series, play the original first and then the remake second. In my opinion, it would be the best choice, because you get to see both games, and both games do have their own strengths. But I mean, I guess you could say if you only have time for one, play the remake, but I think you should play the original as well, because it does a few things way better than the remake. I also want to touch briefly on what I think they should do differently if they ever decide to remake this game, which they probably will sooner or later. So, in my opinion, they should make a playable intro, like actually make me play the intro while I investigate in the forest, because I think possibly also like let me play even before I get into the chopper. Let me explore the RPD a little bit. Maybe make it optional in the sense that you can let me skip it. So on repeated playthroughs, maybe I just can skip it. But I think it will be something interesting to add, both a section in the RPD and a section in the woods before you enter the mansion, the actual mansion. Second, I think they should make all the characters present in the story, like, so no matter who you play with, you should have all the characters in the story, so both Barry and Rebecca. Because at this point I think it's time that they actually do something like this, because we already got a remake, a faithful remake, so making a remake that takes a bit more liberty in this sense and actually gives you a proper version of the story where all the characters are, will be a good thing. Because like I said, at this point they have re-released the first game a lot of time. A lot of people have played it, so they know the story pretty well. Also, the story is very simple in the first game. So I mean, you can add a few things. Yeah, they already added the whole George Trevor subplot, but there's not much else you can add in terms of story before it gets bloated. Like, for example, in Umbrella Chronicles, they tried to add an extra thing on top of everything already, where Sergei, which was the Russian guy that was working for Umbrella, and I think all the tyrants are clones of him. But yeah, he was a high-ranking Umbrella, I think, security agent, officer, I don't remember. But yeah, he was a big shot at Umbrella. And he went to the mansion to recover this prototype, which was a secret prototype of Tyrant that was an even more evolved version of Tyrant. It was called Talos and was supposed to be like a mobile tank, pretty much, because it was just a Tyrant but with armor, metal armor, and cannons, machine guns, something like an armored, weaponized Tyrant, pretty much. So the ultimate form of a Tyrant. And yeah, he goes there to recover this prototype. So they added this little bit of extra lore to the story of the first game in Umbrella Chronicles. But I think adding even more things will make like the plot bloated. So it's fine if they leave the story as a whole like this. Just like I said, make all the characters present in the way the events unfold in the first game. That will make more sense, because otherwise you're just remaking the same game again with a different camera angle. But yeah, this is it for the video. Let me know your experience with the remake, what you thought when it was announced, how you like it, what you don't like about it, and so on. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.